Tales Toolkit was created while working in some of the boroughs in the UK with the highest rates of child poverty. We saw a huge difference in the level that children were coming into school. We were curious about what was happening for the children and what was causing this huge gap in terms of language, social skills and creativity. And when we were really able to dig down further into this, underlying everything was the quality of the interactions that children have when they're young. If these quality interactions are so important, why aren't they happening? I'm sure you've all seen parents that are spending lots of their time on mobile phones. We've met lots of parents that just don't understand the importance of talking to their child. Parents that work long hours in stressful jobs and just don't have the energy needed to interact with their children when they get home. And children aren't playing out with their friends like they used to. Instead, they're spending long periods of time indoors, in front of screens, and you'd like to think this changes when they get to school. But a study that was done across 11 local authorities found that only 5% of adults used open-ended questions and really engaged in those sustained shared thinking conversations. How do we solve this problem? We use the power of story. Story has been proven to impact imagination and creativity, language and communication skills, literacy, social skills, maths, and all types of cognitive thinking. And we've created a method that can really make a huge difference for children. Tales Toolkit uses 4 easy to remember symbols for character, setting, problem, solution on lots of different resources to create interactive, fun stories. We provide these resources with research-based online training. Tales Toolkit develops confidence, creativity, literacy, communication and social skills, and it can be used to solve real-life problems, leading to children becoming more solution-focused. Tales Toolkit is aimed at early years because 85% of brain development happens in the first 5 years of a child's life. So this is where you can make most difference. The evaluation led by the Unit for School and Family Studies at Goldsmiths demonstrates statistically significant differences in outcome between Tales Toolkit settings and controls, equivalent to around 3 months extra progress for Tales Toolkit settings. And you can see them shown here for personal, social and emotional development, expressive art and design, communication and language, literacy and understanding the world. In addition, boys learning with Tales Toolkit had closed the literacy gap with girls by 62%. In the group not using Tales Toolkit, the literacy gap widened by 22%. How do we currently get Tales Toolkit into school? Schools buy into a subscription for a year with Tales Toolkit. They get one of all of our Tales Toolkit resources. They get 5 50-minute online training films, which are run as staff meetings and that they can access and watch as many times over as they like. Downloadable resources, access to a forum, inspiration section, research for every session, and there's a Tales Toolkit shop. This all comes with recorded webinars with top, well-known educational experts on a range of topics, meaning all staff in schools worldwide can easily access this information learning from a range of people. Creating our training, it was really important to us that we use research and best practice. We wanted to empower teachers, give them the knowledge, tools, research, skills that would improve their practice and make a big difference for children in the early years. We use technology to train, but in a way that brings the whole team together and encourages interactions. Our use of online training encourages talk between staff. Training provides a framework within which ideas are endless and children and practitioners can be really creative, hands-on, tactile, and create those interactions that make such a big difference. At the start of the year, we received a grant to create parent training in partnership with Goldsmiths University of London. With Corona, the urgency was stepped up and we've managed to create a home learning website which is free for all of the families of our Tales Toolkit schools. And there's lots of ideas, stories to watch and things that children can do with their families. We have resources to print and use at home. And we also have some special illustrations that we've created based on coronavirus that will help children to explore the big issues that are worrying them. And here's just a few of the wonderful examples and stories we've been getting from home.
So I'm the head teacher of 2 maintained nursery schools in Waltham Forest. Before I came to work here, I worked at another nursery school in Newham as the assistant head. I came into the project as they were doing a big project around Tails Toolkit within their introduction and their staff training. So because I'd had that experience, I thought it would be a really good training programme to introduce as a new head teacher, because it came with pre-created training that was brilliant. It was a package that was brilliant, and both the nursery schools were of a really high standard of quality of teaching. So I knew that it would add to their practice, rather than me trying to create something brand new with a new staff team that I didn't know. But for me, it was about being a new leader, wanting something that was really good quality, that I was familiar with myself, that could have a really big impact on children's language, that added to a school that was already fantastic, 2 schools that were fantastic. And that was a really good approach, and it was a model that you bought in with the videos and with the kit, and it was there and ready to go. So as somebody sort of new to being a head, that really supported me. And then we started to add it into our school development plan to make sure that we had a longer sort of way in with it, rather than just buying something and it's disappearing. Well, the online training is really high quality. You know that you've got a number of sessions with real experts in early years training staff. It's very easy to access. You just log on to the website. Did it in a number of different ways. So we used Inset with the whole staff team across both schools, and then we watched them in staff meetings, giving people time to have discussion, and then people had to go away and do their own learning.
I watched them over the summer so that I could get my head around how it all worked.
And then you were thrown in at the deep end, because Lindsay was also allocated with doing literacy across both schools.
And for me, the videos were really useful. But then it was also, when I came in, I did observe staff that had been doing it within the settings. And that was very, very valuable, having the time to watch them as well in person.
Yeah, but I felt, because we'd spent the money on it, and we know it's not cheap, but it's really good quality, it's worth the money. And we know that all schools at the moment are facing financial challenges, but I didn't want to waste the opportunity that we had. You can buy training, and some people will fall in love with it and do it, but it's how you get the rest of your team involved. So one of the first things I did, also because I had to justify to the governing body about why I'd spent the money on it and the impact that it was going to have on children, was to put it on our school development plan. So in our setting, our appraisals for all staff are done on one of the 4 points from the school development plan. So Tails Toolkit has been on the development plan for 3 years, in different forms. So the first year was, let's get it going, let's see what's working. The second year, peer observation. So there was some accountability there, because staff knew that they would have to plan this with their peer, but also perform in front of their peer. But for our 3rd and 4th year on our school development plan, we added the symbols to our lanyards. So we've got the symbols here. And we knew that it had begun to have an impact on children's resilience and children's description of, there's a problem around me, how am I going to resolve it? So the 3rd and 4th year on our school development plan is, when we see conflict happening, oh dear, there's a problem. Can you tell me how we're going to find a solution?
Thinking of a particular child that would have regular problems within the setting, and he quite likes it if you draw it out for him now with the problem symbol. This has been the problem, what's your solution going to be? And in the beginning, his solutions weren't workable, to put it politely. But he has become much more now. ready to solve the problem and actually know he's been off a little while obviously because of COVID now, but before Christmas we were seeing less conflict with him. And I do think part of that is before he would use his fists through Jolly Tote afterwards, he's hopefully know internally before getting to the point of a fisticuffs. He's already thinking of his solution ahead of time because his solutions did get better. And the children, you know, at the market making table, they see it on your lanyard and it gives them a little prompt. Well, I'm going to do a story, and they'll flick through your symbols. Mine are really dog-eared. I was just saying I need a new set because they'll flick through them with you to help them with their storytelling. They're so used to it now that they want to start telling their own stories.
And we always make sure with our school development plan as well that it's on the walls, so that staff know that's what we're focusing on. And that's good if you're preparing for something like OFSTED, like we always are, but just to keep it in staff's mind. So as it's always one of the 4 points on our school development plan, there's always a display that is added to. It's also stuck to the tables. We've stuck symbols in the small world room. We've stuck symbols on the blocks, just to have it as a visual prompt for everyone. So obviously we have the bags and we have the belts and all of that in the environment and ready to go. But we also have the symbols around so that children can begin to use it themselves. And we find over the year, because we tend to have children for 1 or 2 years in our nursery settings, at the beginning, it's very adult-led. So the adults are telling the story, they're using that language. But for many groups of our children, regardless of ability, the more versed they are in it, it comes through in mark making and they're making their own books. But it also comes through in their own play, particularly in small world.
And it's funny because you can start your session with your bags and you've got a few children, and by the time you come to the end you've got maybe like such a large group and all of a sudden they've all got solutions in their pockets. Well, I've made this that can be the solution, which is really nice.
And thinking about Lindsay's professional development, so when Lindsay joined us, she came from a primary school where there weren't 2-year-olds, and I remember Lindsay saying, oh my goodness, 2-year-olds, how am I going to do this? And then watching her for her appraisal, watching her teaching session, which was a group of 7 or 8 children doing Tales Toolkit that became a group of 25.
Wow.
It really hooks them in though. It does really hook them in as soon as you get the bags out.
But you know when you're being observed, it just got bigger and bigger, and I kind of pushed myself back. And I had children on my lap in the end, and I was having my clipboard trying to write things down. And just remember watching this 2-year-old come in, and as 2-year-olds do, in the middle of the circle, what's going on, plonking themselves on Lindsay's lap, and Lindsay just carrying on. It does hook children in.
It does. I know, a whole range of children.
Inside and outside.
Yeah.
So we have the symbols outside as well. A lot of them aren't making outside. We know that you know, boys on their bikes, for instance, if the Tales Toolkit symbols are outside, the role play happens even as they're scooting around. So it's hooked all of our children in, regardless of ability, language, gender.
So it's so flexible that you can do it in the midst of play, but you can also do it as a table activity, sitting down quite formally.
And because it's got it's very systematic. In a more formal setting where things are more systematic, works very well. But also, if you've got a range of ability within your staff team, it's fantastic, because you will have people like Lindsay modelling really brilliant practice, and staff that perhaps aren't as confident, maybe because they're newer to early years. It upskills people quickly because you've got that system. Children with special needs, non-verbal children, looking for that system. Very able children go away, create their own stories, begin to write them. And it definitely would work very well within Key Stage 1. And I'm constantly flagging it up to my own children's school.
Oh, good.
Because particularly within that Year 1, Year 2 literacy framework, where you're creating stories that have a problem and a solution. If children have been doing it from nursery, I mean, the cost of just implementing it into nursery and into year 2, there would be significant, I'd imagine, impact on data if that's what people need, and proof in the pudding. Children are so versed in it by the end of nursery, writing those stories. I mean, I grew up as a practitioner in Tower Hamlets, and we used helicopter stories for a really long time. Brilliant. But a lot of the children that I worked with didn't have books in their home, didn't have a lot of experience with story. This gave them, developed their kind of thinking around what, not just a story needs a middle and an end, but there was the problem and the solution, because my experience with helicopter stories was that children would say, and then, and then, and then, and perhaps everyone would die at the end. You know, there was that, because they didn't have enough story experience to pin their stories on. In Walthamstow, we have a vast range, don't we?
Of children, yeah.
We have very affluent children alongside very deprived children. And I wasn't sure, after growing up in Tower Hamlets and then going to Newham, how I was going to deal with that. But actually, those children give an incredible language bank to our children that need the support. So it's going on there, and they've got that story background
And
themselves.
the wealth of the stories, yeah.
They've been being read to since they were babies. But this levels the playing field for everyone else. And that's why it's so significant for us, because yes, we do have those affluent children, but we also have one of the poorest council estates in the country. And we have those children side by side. So when we're thinking about narrowing the gap, it's really significant.
And it's very easy throughout the Tales Toolkit session to differentiate for all of them. So you can have them all working together, and through how you target either their role or your questioning, you can really stretch the children who have got this wealth of knowledge. But then for the children who have not got the wealth of story, you're giving them the support of the structure, but also building up their vocabulary through what you've got in your bags.
And I would say to settings that are considering this, if you've got children with pupil premium, early years pupil premium, this is a really good way to spend that money, because you will have really good proof that it's had an impact by the end of it. And it's something that will be consistent, not just for this year with pupil premium children. Once you've embedded it in your practice, it's worth the spend the first year for the rest of those children that will benefit from it. So there are ways around, if you're thinking about where that money is going to come from, to buy into it as a project. And I would say pupil premium is a really good example of using this as a package to level that playing field between the more affluent families that have got loads of cultural capital going on. They've been to art galleries, they've been to all the museums, and have had stories read to them and have got hundreds of books in their home, to children that perhaps maybe have no books in their home. And this ensures that all those children have the same start.
Yeah, it's true. Because I know when I was working in Tower Hamlets and using it there when we first began, like you said, we had quite a mix in terms of affluent children in the area that we were with, and then your children that need a lot more support and hadn't had a story. But we had a little boy who had global delay, and he was the best storyteller. Didn't have a lot of language, he'd do it through signing, but he'd have the whole class kind of enraptured in stories, and he felt really powerful and confident from that, because like he could do something through that structure that engaged all of his friends that were like a lot higher in terms of their language and communication skills.
And actually, it's funny because I just was clearing out some through my old cupboard, and I found just an example of one little boy who's been here. This is his second year, and I found 2 of his books that he's made. One from like November 19, and the language in his and the sentence structure, looking at the 2 side by side was brilliant.
And if you're a school that has to prove a lot, you know, evidence-wise, if you're a school that needs to improve for any reason, it's really good information to show how children improve. And one of the things that we did in Newham that we haven't introduced here so much, and maybe we can think about this moving on, is the storytelling books where you collect that information. So you have 3 times a year or more than that, the same children telling stories and the evidence is just very clear. So yes, it's around their literacy because they've got a greater understanding of story, but around their language, often it's personal and social because the problems that they're solving, the way that they solve them are fascinating. When I was in Newham, I worked with 2 children that were elected mutes, and one of them was a highly intelligent girl who had some medical difficulties when she was younger, and she had a huge understanding and could actually read, but for 2 years didn't speak at all. She spoke for the first time in a Tales Toolkit session to me. So she talked to her friends. She got to the point where she talked to her friends, but if she saw an adult anywhere near her, it would all stop. But she felt secure enough in the process, so she knew what was going to happen next, and it burst out of her. So we had, the character was a dinosaur. So often when you start out with Tales Toolkit, the dinosaur might be the problem because, you know, dinosaurs eat people. But we moved on significantly in our storytelling, and the dinosaur was the main character. The problem was a man with one of those sort of small world men with a box on his shoulder. And one of the children had said something along the lines of the dinosaur and the man had a fight, and this child stopped everyone and it burst out of her, and she said, no, that's not the problem. The man wants to be a friend. He's got a present. The problem is the dinosaur doesn't understand it. And we went, it was, and it burst out of her. And because there was enough structure for her to model her language on, she felt secure in that environment. And it was really very incredible. And it, you know, for her, it was significant because she knew that there was a consistent framework that she could share her thoughts in, and she felt safe.
Do you want to talk to me a little bit about how you've been using Tales Toolkit during COVID and with homeschooling?
Yeah, so we have been doing regular videos with the children through an online platform, and we've built Tales Toolkit into these regular videos and Zoom sessions. It works quite well in terms of probably me telling it, because it's quite hard to police across. We're doing it on Zoom, everyone's yelling, including some of the parents, because they enjoy doing it, they get involved as well, and you know, they've got their ideas. But it's worked well where I've been retelling stories and shown the simplicity of how parents can easily do it at home with resources that the children have, and then they've actually sent in pictures of stories that they've drawn where their parent has written out their story for them, and they've shared that through their portfolio, which we could, although we weren't seeing them, we could then keep a record of their lovely storytelling that they've been doing at home.
And it's been a fresh idea for parents.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure lots of you have been at home with your children, and it's that exhaustion of, I need a new idea. And Tales Toolkit does translate really well to being able to tell stories at home with your children and modelling, there's a problem, let's find a solution.
And some of the videos that I did using just everyday objects, you don't need anything fancy. It can be your whisk from your kitchen is part of the story. I think parents have found that comforting, that it's something that they can carry on doing with their children. And
also just ensuring that we're planning our online curriculum to have lots of creative bits in it. We know that this year we have referred more children to speech and language than we ever have before. We also know that our imaginative play isn't as high in our data as it would usually be. So we're having to put some of those things in at home to ensure that those children are getting elements of that. So it really has made sure that we've bridged that gap for everybody as well. And we're not just talking about affluent and deprived families. Everybody has found it really challenging to keep their children entertained when it's play-based, you know, and understanding the value of play at home. Play is noisy, play is messy. If you're very stressed out and you're trying to do your job as well, But having a quality 10 minutes where you say, actually, we're going to pin this down and here's our structure has really helped our families.
It'll be a nice welcome back for them, I think, as well. You know, a bit of familiarity.
Yeah.
That they're coming back. And it's a nice way to regroup them and get them working as a group.
For those children that need some intervention, Tales Toolkit can be used as an intervention method. I know the government have talked about an intervention within reception, within speech and language. This could be used as that, and personally I think it's better because it's ideas coming from the children rather than language being fed in by an adult. It's always been on our recovery curriculum. We are play-based, but we have a balance of focus-led activity and child-led, but the role of the adult is to intersperse really high-quality language. So Tales Toolkit is on our recovery curriculum because it creates a framework to pin that upon.
Yeah,
and it is good as an intervention because it's not something that's done in a separate room, and it's something that you do within the classroom, but that children can easily copy when they're in the small world. They can get their character and they can get their problem, you know, whereas sometimes interventions can be language that's applicable at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And I think what you said there is really important, because I think for children returning back from being at home for all this time, I think it's really important that they're with their friends. To take children away to a back room with an adult when they really need to be playing and with their friends right now, and if you can have those interventions happening in the play, I think it's really important.
And for many children returning to nursery, there's going to be a lot of conflict.
Yes.
They may not have had to have shared anything for 6 months. There's going to be conflict as they leave their parents. Families are always really impressed with the fact that we're not dumbing down language for children. So parents always used to come back into me and say, oh my goodness, my child's using the word problem and solution. And they know what it means and they're applying it. So I think when we're thinking about having really high aspirations for children, so we know our intent is 30 to 50, but 40 to 60 really for a majority of our children as we leave. Thinking about the language descriptions within the 40 to 60 statements, thinking about the literacy 40 to 60, you know, and if you've got to bridge a year's worth of learning fairly quickly, it's a really good resource to do that, because we know particularly for the literacy, the 40 to 60 jumps from ascribes meanings to marks to suddenly they're writing a whole sentence, aren't they?
And you know, in the 30-50 reading, in the past, when I've been like in the primary school, it's how are we going to build these skills? Tales Toolkit ticks off the majority of those reading skills as well.
We've also been preparing for OFSTED for like 3 years. And when thinking about all the cultural capital stuff and thinking about, you know, what is the impact of our intent and the impact of how we teach that, Tales Toolkit does answer a lot of those questions for us. And we can all describe it. It's on the walls. It's cleared in our school development plan.
Children can describe it.
It's within our appraisal system. So it's very well embedded, and it answers all of those questions for us, because obviously we're not doing what we do for OFSTED, but it has helped us to feel really secure in our practice.
As an extra special offer for schools in Waltham Forest, we're offering £50 off the startup cost, plus a £50 voucher to spend on extra kit if you sign up before the 1st of July. Just email us or get in touch through our website and use the code WF0521. That's on top of the discount of £100 that each setting will get back from the borough if they'd subscribe to Tales Toolkit. We can't wait to hear from you and start telling stories. Thanks for watching.